Elara lived in a house that smelled of old paper and lavender, nestled on the quietest street in Havenwood. It was a street where ancient oak trees intertwined their branches overhead, dappling the sun-drenched cobblestones with shifting patterns of light and shade, and where the gentle rhythm of life moved at a pace dictated by the seasons. Havenwood itself was a town plucked from a storybook, its brick buildings softened by time and climbing ivy, its main square boasting a fountain where children often tossed pennies, making wishes that shimmered briefly before sinking into the cool water. Her mornings began with the soft whistle of the kettle and the distant chime of the old clock tower. Elara would sip her tea by the window, watching the town slowly awaken, a quiet observer of its gentle unfolding. Her life was steeped in stories, not just the ones bound in leather and paper, but the silent narratives etched into the very fabric of Havenwood. She was the head librarian, a role she cherished with a devotion that bordered on reverence. The library, a grand, slightly eccentric Victorian building with turrets and stained glass windows, was her sanctuary, her second home. But beyond the daily duties of cataloging new arrivals and recommending tales of adventure or romance, Elara possessed a rarer, more delicate skill. In a small sun-drenched room at the back of her house, filled with the scent of beeswax and aged parchment, with nimble fingers and an artist's patience, she mended torn pages, rebound crumbling spines, and polished leather covers until they gleamed with a renewed, dignified luster. Each book was a world, and she, its quiet guardian, ensuring its longevity. Elara was by nature a gentle soul. Her smile was a soft curve that reached her eyes, which were the color of warm honey and held a depth of kindness that invited trust. She wore her light brown hair in a simple braid, often adorned with the small wildflowers she'd gathered from her garden. She found solace in routine, in the predictable beauty of her days, yet sometimes, in the quietest hours of the evening, a whisper of longing would stir within her. A longing for a story of her own, perhaps, one that wasn't bound within pages, but lived and breathed in the world outside. One Tuesday, a package arrived at the library, an unexpected delivery that sent a ripple of excitement through the usually serene atmosphere. It was a small, heavily wrapped box, addressed directly to Elara, with a return label from a renowned antique dealer in Edinburgh. Inside, nestled amongst layers of tissue paper, was a book unlike any she had seen. It was titled in elegant, faded script, Whis, the Forgotten Garden of Whispers. The book itself was small, no larger than her hand, bound in a dark velvety green leather that felt impossibly soft beneath her fingertips. Its edges were gilt, now dulled by centuries, and a single, intricate silver clasp held its covers together. But it was the scent that captivated her first, not the usual musty aroma of old books, but something sweeter, fainter, like dried herbs and rain on rich earth. It promised secrets, ancient and tender. The accompanying note from the dealer was brief. A rare find, Miss Vance, believed to be a one-of-a-kind, hand-scribed volume from the early 18th century. Its condition is fragile, but its beauty undeniable. We trust it in your capable hands for restoration. Elara carried the book home as if it were spun from moonlight, placing it carefully on her workbench. She spent the rest of the afternoon simply studying it, admiring the delicate tooling on its spine, the barely visible watermark on its title page. It felt less like a book and more like a captured memory. Her fingers traced the silver clasp, which was intricately carved with entwined vines and tiny, almost imperceptible forget-me-not flowers. With a soft click, it opened, revealing pages made of the finest vellum, filled with elegant looping script. The ink had faded to a gentle sepia, but the words were still legible, telling a poetic tale of a hidden garden, a place of solace and secret beauty, tended by a solitary figure who found companionship in the rustling leaves and the songs of hidden birds. As she gently turned the fragile pages, a small, almost translucent pressed flower slipped from between the leaves and landed softly on her workbench. It was a forget-me-not, its delicate blue hue still remarkably vibrant considering its age. And tucked just beneath where the flower had rested, almost invisible against the creamy vellum, was a tiny silk bookmark. It was no larger than her thumb, made of finely woven silk, an aged cream color, and stitched with a single, almost imperceptible word in delicate silver thread. Elara leaned closer, her breath held. Whis. Or Mafi. The word seemed to shimmer, a quiet invitation. She touched it, and a faint, sweet scent, like old roses in summer rain, wafted up. It felt impossibly old, impossibly precious. This tiny bookmark, almost an afterthought, seemed to hold more weight than the entire book. It hummed with a quiet significance, a subtle whisper that resonated deep within her. She carefully placed the bookmark and the pressed flower into a protective sleeve, knowing they were integral to the book's story. This wasn't just a restoration project. It was an excavation of time, a decoding of forgotten emotions. The next morning, Alara returned to the library, the scent of the forgotten garden of whispers still clinging faintly to her fingertips. The library was quiet, as it often was on a Wednesday morning, save for the gentle rustle of turning pages and the occasional soft cough. She was at the main desk, sorting through returned novels, when the front door chimed, announcing a new arrival. She looked up, and her breath caught, just for a moment. He was tall, with a lean grace that spoke of quiet strength, and hair the color of rich, dark earth, falling just slightly over intelligent, deep-set eyes. He wore a tweed jacket, elbow patches and all, that looked comfortably worn, and carried a leather satchel slung over one shoulder. There was an air about him, a blend of scholarly intent and a gentle curiosity, that made him seem perfectly at home in the quiet grandeur of the library. He moved with a deliberate, unhurried pace, his gaze sweeping over the towering bookshelves, a faint, appreciative smile playing on his lips. Alara, usually composed, found herself a little flustered. She rarely felt such an immediate, almost instinctive pull of interest. He approached the desk, his smile deepening as he met her gaze. "Good morning," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble that felt like sunshine on a cool day. "I hope I'm not disturbing anything." "Not at all," Alara managed, her voice a little softer than usual. "Welcome to the Havenwood Library. Can I help you find something?" "I hope so," he replied, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "My name is Julian Thorne. I'm an architectural historian, and I've just moved to Havenwood for a research project. Your town, as I understand, boasts some truly remarkable early 19th century structures." Alara's heart gave a little flutter. An architectural historian. Of course. It made perfect sense. "It does," she confirmed, a genuine smile now gracing her lips. "We're very proud of our heritage. Do you have specific buildings in mind? Or are you looking for general historical records?" "Both, actually," Julian said, running a hand through his dark hair. "I'm particularly interested in the old mill house, down by the Willow Creek. I understand it has a rather storied past." "The mill house," Alara mused. "Yes, it certainly does. It's one of the oldest buildings in Havenwood. We have several archival documents, old blueprints, and even a few personal accounts from past residents. They're kept in our special collections, upstairs." "That would be wonderful," he said, his eyes lighting up. "I'd be incredibly grateful for any access you could provide." "Of course," Alara replied, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I can show you to the research room. We'll need to sign you up for a temporary research pass, and I'll explain our archival procedures." As she led him through the hushed aisles, past towering shelves filled with centuries of human thought and imagination, she felt an unfamiliar lightness in her step. Julian walked beside her, his presence a comforting warmth, and she found herself stealing glances at him. He had a thoughtful intensity about him, a quiet strength that was deeply appealing. In the research room, a quiet space with heavy oak tables and soft lamplight, Alara explained the rules for handling the delicate historical documents. Julian listened attentively, asking intelligent questions, his gaze often returning to her, making her feel seen in a way she hadn't quite experienced before. "Thank you, Ms. Vance," he said, once she had pulled out the first few boxes of documents for him. "This is invaluable. I truly appreciate your help." "Please, call me Alara," she offered, a shy blush rising to her cheeks. "And I'm happy to help. It's not often we have someone so keenly interested in Havenwood's architectural past." "Alara," he repeated, testing the name on his tongue, and she felt a pleasant shiver. "It suits you. You have the air of someone who guards beautiful old things." His words struck a chord, touching upon her deepest passion. "I suppose I do," she admitted, a genuine warmth filling her. "I also restore books, in my spare time." "Do you?" Julian's eyes widened with interest. "That's a remarkable skill, to breathe new life into forgotten pages." "It is," she agreed. "Each book has a story, not just within its pages, but in its very existence." Their conversation flowed easily, an unexpected current of connection that surprised Elara. He spoke of his love for the stories buildings told, the way they echoed the lives lived within their walls, and she spoke of the silent language of books, the whispers of their past owners. It felt as if they had known each other for years, finding common ground in their shared appreciation for history and beauty. "I imagine you've come across some incredible volumes then," Julian remarked, leaning back slightly in his chair. "Any particularly memorable ones?" Elara hesitated, then a small smile touched her lips. "As a matter of fact, I've just begun work on one that's quite extraordinary. It's called The Forgotten Garden of Whispers." Julian froze, a subtle shift in his posture, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Is it?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost a murmur. I believe I've heard of that title. A rather elusive book, if memory serves." "Indeed," Elara said, intrigued by his reaction. "It's a hand-scribed volume from the 18th century, very fragile." Julian's gaze intensified, fixing on her with an almost startling clarity. His usual easy smile had vanished, replaced by a thoughtful, almost solemn expression. "Whis," he repeated, the word a soft exhalation. "Are you quite sure?" "Quite sure," Elara confirmed, a sudden knot of curiosity tightening in her stomach. Do you know of it?" He hesitated for a long moment, his eyes searching hers as if weighing a secret. "It's a very old family name," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "From my mother's side, Whisperstone. They were known for their gardens and for their eccentric, artistic leanings." He paused, then added, "My great-great-grandmother, Eleanor Whisperstone, was said to have written a book of poetry and botanical observations. It was rumored to be lost." Elara felt a thrill, a shiver of recognition. "Eleanor Whisperstone," she breathed. "The book is a poetic tale about a hidden garden, full of botanical observations, and it certainly feels like poetry." She looked at him, a sudden surge of excitement making her words tumble out. "Julian, this could be our book. The description perfectly matches." His eyes, dark and deep, met hers. "It would be an incredible discovery," he said, a genuine awe in his tone. "To think it found its way here, to Havenwood, to you." "And to you," Elara corrected softly, a sense of destiny stirring within her. Perhaps it was meant to. They stood there for a moment, the quiet hum of the library enveloping them, a shared understanding blossoming between them, as delicate and profound as the pressed forget-me-not. The book, The Forgotten Garden of Whispers, had not only begun to mend under Elara's gentle touch, but it had also, in its own quiet way, begun to weave a new story, drawing two solitary souls closer. Over the next few days, Julian became a regular fixture in the research room. Elara found herself looking forward to his arrival each morning, the quiet anticipation a new and welcome feeling. Their conversations, initially centered around Havenwood's history and architecture, slowly broadened to encompass everything from their favorite authors to their dreams for the future. He spoke of his desire to write his own book one day, not just about buildings, but about the spirit of places, the echoes of lives that lingered. Elara, in turn, found herself sharing more than she usually did, opening up about her love for the tactile beauty of books, the smell of old paper, the quiet satisfaction of mending something broken. She learned that Julian had traveled extensively for his work, studying ancient ruins and forgotten villages, but had always felt a pull towards the rootedness of a small town. Havenwood, he'd confessed one afternoon, leaning back in his chair, a faint smile playing on his lips, feels like coming home, somehow, like a place where stories are allowed to unfold at their own pace. Elara understood completely. Havenwood had always felt like that to her, too. The Forgotten Garden of Whispers continued to occupy her evenings. She meticulously cleaned each page, applied delicate tissue where the vellum had thinned, and carefully re-stitched the spine. With each touch, she felt closer to Eleanor Whisperstone, the mysterious author, and by extension, closer to Julian. One evening, as she was working under the soft glow of her desk lamp, she decided to examine the silk bookmark, Whis, more closely. She held it up, tilting it to catch the light. The silver embroidery, though faded, was exquisite. As she turned it, she noticed something else, something she hadn't seen before. On the very edge of the silk, almost swallowed by the fraying threads, was a minuscule symbol, barely visible, a tiny, stylized oak leaf, intertwined with a delicate willow branch. It was the symbol of Havenwood, etched into the old town's historical crest, often found on old lampposts and the town square fountain. A gasp escaped her lips. This bookmark, this Whison, was not just an old family heirloom of Julian's ancestors, but it was directly tied to Havenwood itself. It deepened the mystery, and the connection, even further. Eleanor Whisperstone must have lived, at least for a time, in Havenwood. The next morning, Alara could barely contain her excitement. She knew Julian would be in the research room, poring over old ledgers. She found him there, his dark head bent over a large, leather-bound volume. A pair of spectacles perched on his nose. He looked up as she approached, his eyes lighting up with their usual warmth. "Good morning, Alara," he said, pushing his spectacles up onto his forehead. "You look like you've uncovered a treasure." "I think I have," she replied, her voice brimming with barely suppressed delight. "The bookmark. The Whis' bookmark." Julian set the ledger aside, his full attention on her. "What about it?" "It has a symbol," she explained, pulling the bookmark, carefully encased in its protective sleeve, from her pocket. She laid it gently on the table between them. "Look closely, right here, on the edge." He leaned in, his dark eyes scrutinizing the tiny silk rectangle. He picked it up, his fingers brushing hers for a fleeting moment, sending a spark through her. "An oak leaf," he murmured, "and a willow branch. Intertwine." His gaze snapped up to hers, a dawning realization in his eyes. That's the Havenwood crest, isn't it?" "It is," Alara confirmed, a triumphant smile on her face. "Eleanor Whisperstone, your great-great-grandmother, must have lived here in Havenwood. This book, Die the Forgotten Garden of Whispers, wasn't just ye frying her. It was ye for this place, or inspired Igby this place." Julian's face was a study in wonder. He traced the symbol with a careful finger, his thoughts clearly racing. "My family records are sparse on where Eleanor lived exactly. She was always described as a wanderer in the family lore, but always returned to the family estate, Whisperstone Manor, which is many miles from here. This changes everything. It suggests a deeper, more personal connection to Havenwood than we ever knew." "Perhaps," Alara suggested, her own mind beginning to piece together fragments of the town's history, "she was the original gardener of the old mill house. Its gardens are notoriously beautiful, even in their current slightly overgrown state, and it has a very old, almost forgotten section that's rumored to have been a private, secret garden." Julian's eyes widened. "The mill house. That's what I'm researching. The historical blueprints show a walled-off section in the back, marked private garden in an almost illegible hand. We thought it was just an architectural flourish." He looked at her, a profound sense of connection in his gaze. "Alara, this isn't just a book restoration. This is a revelation. For my family, for Havenwood, and for me." She met his gaze, and in that moment, the library, the research room, the very world outside, seemed to fade away. There was only the quiet hum of their discovery, the shared excitement, and the palpable, undeniable current that flowed between them. The book, the Forgotten Garden of Whispers, with its delicate pressed flower and its whispered whis, had brought them together, unfolding a story that was both ancient and thrillingly new. It felt like the beginning of something truly special, a story that was just starting to bloom, like a forgotten garden brought back to life by the gentle touch of spring. And Alara, who had always found her greatest joy in the pages of others' stories, felt a thrilling sense of anticipation for the one that was now, finally, becoming her own. The soft lamplight cast long, dancing shadows across Leo's study, illuminating the dust motes that swirled like tiny stars in the air between them. Alara's heart thrummed a rhythm that was both ancient and utterly new, a counterpoint to the quiet ticking of an antique clock on the mantelpiece. She looked at Leo, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and a breathless wonder that mirrored his own. The book, Whisperson, lay open between them on the worn leather of his desk, its pages a testament to a connection that transcended time, a thread spun across generations, now finally, miraculously, woven between them. "Whis," she whispered, the name a soft caress on her lips. It was the name her grandmother had used, a secret word spoken with a wistful smile, often accompanied by the gentle press of a dried flower into the pages of a forgotten novel. Alara had always thought it was a playful nickname, a private language between her and her beloved Nana, a secret garden of words. But here, in Leo's hands, was a book, earthy book that breathed life into that forgotten whisper. Leo reached out, his finger tracing the delicate outline of the pressed flower on the page, then gently touched the title. Whispersing, he murmured, his voice a low, resonant melody that seemed to vibrate through the very air. It's been in my family for generations. My great-grandmother, she called it her book of quiet reflections. She'd press flowers from places she loved, places she dreamed of, and write little prose poems next to them. She said they were the whispers of the world, moments caught and held. Alara felt a shiver, not of cold, but of profound recognition. My Nana, she did the same. Not this book, I don't think, but she had a collection of old novels, and she'd press flowers into them. And she'd always say, "Listen, Alara, can you hear the whispers?" It was her way of teaching me to find the hidden stories, the secret lives of things. Her gaze met Leo's, and in his eyes she saw a reflection of her own astonishment, a nascent understanding that was both thrilling and deeply comforting. The flower you showed me earlier, the one that fell out of your jacket pocket, was it from this book? Leo nodded slowly, his fingers still resting on the page. Yes, it was tucked between these pages. I've been meaning to put it back. It's an evening primrose. My great-grandmother wrote a small piece about the quiet magic of twilight blooms next to it. He shifted, pulling a second chair closer to the desk, inviting her to sit beside him. The gesture was simple, yet it held a warmth that settled deep within Alara. She sat, her knee brushing his, a spark of electricity dancing between them. My Nana loved evening primroses, Alara said, her voice barely a breath. She said they were shy, opening only when the world was quiet enough to truly listen. She looked at the book again, the parchment-like pages yellowed with age, the ink faded in places, yet vibrant with the echoes of a life lived with intention and beauty. It's like our grandmothers knew each other somehow, or at least shared a soul-deep language. Leo picked up the book carefully, cradling it in his hands. My great-grandmother, Alara Amelia, was an avid traveler, even in an era when it was uncommon for women. She chronicled her journeys not just with words, but with these tiny botanical souvenirs. And her dearest friend, her confidante, was a woman named Eleanor, who she met during her travels in the English countryside. He paused, looking at Alara, a slow smile spreading across his face. Eleanor, could that be your Nana? Alara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My Nana's full name was Eleanor Evelyn. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage. She told me stories of her youth, of a grand adventure she had in England, but she never gave many details. She just said she met a kindred spirit, someone who taught her to see the beauty in the smallest things, and to listen for the whispers of the world. Tears pricked at Alara's eyes, a mixture of joy and a profound sense of connection to a past she had only ever glimpsed in fragments. Leo's smile softened, his gaze warm and steady. This is extraordinary, Alara. He gently turned a few more pages, revealing more delicate pressed flowers, a forget-me-not, a tiny sprig of heather, a vibrant fuchsia, each one accompanied by elegant, looping script. My great-grandmother wrote about how Eleanor had a way of finding beauty in the most unexpected places, how she believed that every story, no matter how small, deserved to be told. Alara leaned closer, peering at the faded script. My Nana used to say that too. She said the quietest stories were often the most profound, like the secret life of a flower. She reached out, her finger hovering over a tiny, perfectly preserved bluebell. This is incredible, Leo. It's like they were leaving breadcrumbs for us to find. They spent the next hour lost in the pages of In Whispers, a shared journey through time and memory. Leo pointed out passages his great-grandmother had written about Eleanor, descriptions of their walks through sun-dappled glades, their shared laughter over cups of strong tea, their quiet conversations about the universe and the human heart. Alara, in turn, remembered anecdotes from her Nana, stories that now, in light of Leo's discoveries, took on a deeper, richer meaning. The two women, separated by decades but united by their love for beauty and stories, seemed to bridge the gap between their grandchildren, creating a silent conversation across generations. The initial shock gave way to a comfortable, exhilarating intimacy. They talked about their grandmothers, their quirks, their wisdom, their legacies. They spoke of the quiet ways these women had shaped their own lives, instilled in them a love for the written word, for the subtle beauty of nature, for the magic that lies just beneath the surface of the ordinary. Elara felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the discovery, but for the way it was unfolding with Leo. There was no need for grand pronouncements, just a shared, quiet wonder that deepened with every page they turned, every memory they exchanged. Eventually, the clock on the mantel chimed midnight, its gentle summons breaking their reverie. Elara looked up, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. I didn't realize how late it was. Leo closed the book, his movements slow and reverent. Time seems to bend when you're discovering something truly magical, doesn't it? He met her gaze, his eyes warm and sincere. Thank you for sharing this with me, Elara. Thank you for being you. He reached across the desk, his hand gently covering hers. His touch was warm, comforting, and sent a delicious shiver through her. Thank you, Leo, she replied, her voice a soft murmur. For bringing this incredible story to life, for showing me that some stories are meant to be found, not just read. She felt a vulnerability, a tender opening in her heart that she hadn't expected. This wasn't just about a book or their grandmothers. It was about them, about the unfolding of their own story, which felt intertwined with the past in a way that was both humbling and incredibly exciting. He squeezed her hand lightly. It's late. Can I walk you home? Elara nodded, her smile soft and radiant. I'd like that very much. The walk home through the quiet, lamp-lit streets of Willow Creek was imbued with a new kind of magic. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and the distant memory of wood smoke. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their hands brushing occasionally, a silent conversation passing between them. Elara felt a sense of belonging she hadn't known she was missing, a quiet joy that hummed beneath her skin. The world around them, usually just scenery, now seemed to shimmer with possibility, each shadow holding a secret, each rustle of leaves a whispered story. When they reached her doorstep, Elara turned to face him, the gentle glow of her porch light illuminating the thoughtful expression on his face. I still can't quite believe it, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. The chances, it's like something out of one of my books. Leo chuckled softly, a sound that warmed her from the inside out. Perhaps life is just the greatest story of all, waiting for us to turn the page. He paused, his eyes searching hers. I'd like to keep exploring this, Elara. This book, the connection between our grandmothers and us. Would you be willing to do that? Her heart swelled with a joyful affirmation. More than anything, Leo. He smiled, a genuine open smile that made her breath catch. Good. Then how about we continue our research tomorrow? Perhaps over coffee at the Daily Grind after you open the shop. That sounds perfect, she agreed, her voice a little breathless. She longed to reach out, to touch his face, to somehow capture the magic of the moment. But she held back, savoring the anticipation, the slow, delicious unfolding of something truly special. Good night, Elara, he said, his voice a warm caress. He leaned in, and for a moment, she thought he would kiss her. Her eyes fluttered closed, her lips parting slightly. But instead he gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his touch light as a feather, sending a jolt of delicious warmth through her. Sleep well, dream of whispers. He turned and walked away, his silhouette receding into the gentle darkness of the street. Elara stood there for a long moment, her hand pressed to her chest, feeling the echoes of his touch, the lingering scent of his cologne. The night air, once just cool, now felt charged with a vibrant energy. She finally stepped inside, her little cottage feeling suddenly brighter, imbued with the light of a shared secret, a rediscovered past, and a thrillingly hopeful future. She fell asleep with a smile on her face, the image of Whispersea and Leo's kind eyes dancing behind her eyelids. The next morning, Elara woke with a lightness in her step that had been missing for years. The sun streamed through her window, painting golden stripes across her worn rug. She hummed a little tune as she made her tea, her mind replaying the previous night's extraordinary discovery. The Whispersing book, the connection between their grandmothers, Leo's gentle touch, it all felt like a dream, yet the warmth in her heart was undeniably real. At the bookshop, the written word, the familiar scent of old paper and fresh coffee usually grounded her. Today, it felt like a launchpad. She arranged a display of new arrivals, her fingers tingling with a new energy. Her usual morning routine, once a comforting rhythm, now felt infused with the promise of something wonderful. Just as she was unlocking the front door, a familiar figure appeared, a paper cup in each hand. Leo, died. He was wearing a soft linen shirt that brought out the warmth in his eyes, and a relaxed smile that made her heart skip a beat. "Morning, Elara," he said, extending one of the cups to her. "I figured a proper research session required proper fuel." "Perfect timing," she replied, accepting the warm cup. The scent of dark roast filled the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of the books. "Come in, I'm just opening up." He followed her inside, his gaze sweeping over the shelves, a thoughtful expression on his face. "This place, it truly is magical, isn't it? So many stories waiting to be discovered." "And some, it seems, waiting to be uncovered, eh?" Elara added, a playful glint in her eye. She led him to the small reading nook at the back, where two plush armchairs faced each other across a low, antique table. "I was just thinking about the book. Did you look at it again this morning?" Leo settled into one of the chairs, setting his coffee down. "I did. I found a small inscription on the inside cover that I'd never paid much attention to. It's written in my great-grandmother's hand. 'To my dearest Eleanor, with all the love held within these pages, and all the whispers of our shared adventures. May they guide us home, always,' and is dated 1948. Elara felt a catch in her throat. 1048. That would have been just before my Nana returned home from England. She never spoke much about her life there, just that it was a time of great change and discovery for her. And guide us home. It's almost like the book was meant to connect them, even when they were apart." "Exactly what I thought," Leo said, his eyes alight with enthusiasm. "My great-grandmother Amelia passed away relatively young, but she held onto this book as her most treasured possession. My grandfather always spoke of it with reverence, but he didn't know the story behind Eleanor. He just knew it was incredibly important to her." He leaned forward, his voice dropping slightly. "This makes me wonder, Elara, if there's a companion volume out there somewhere. A Whispers book that belonged to your Nana." Elara's mind raced. I don't know. Nana had so many books. After she passed, we packed them all up, but I kept a few of her favorites, the ones she'd pressed flowers into. I have them at home. I could go through them tonight, see if anything matches." "That's a brilliant idea," Leo said, his gaze warm and encouraging. "We could be looking at two halves of a whole, two journeys that intersected and then diverged, only to bring us together now." He reached across the table, picking up a small, smooth river stone that Elara used as a paperweight. He turned it over in his fingers, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It's like they left us a treasure map, isn't it? A map not of gold, but of connection, of shared history." Elara nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of excitement and a deep, comforting sense of destiny. "A treasure far more valuable than gold. A story." She looked around her bookshop, the shelves filled with countless narratives, and felt a profound understanding of her own place within this unfolding tale. "My Nana always said that the greatest adventures weren't always about grand journeys, but about uncovering the hidden beauty in the everyday, the secret threads that connect us all." "And she was right," Leo agreed, his eyes shining. "I've spent my life chasing stories across the globe, writing about forgotten villages and ancient ruins. But this feels like the most profound story I've ever encountered." His words, spoken so simply, sent a flush through Elara. She met his gaze, and in his eyes, she saw not just admiration, but a genuine warmth, a burgeoning affection that mirrored her own. The air between them crackled with unspoken emotions, with the tender promise of what might be. "So, what's our next step, detective?" Elara asked, a playful smile on her lips, trying to lighten the intensity of the moment. Leo leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. "Well, after you search for a companion book, I think we should delve deeper into the whispers I have. My great-grandmother often included little clues within her entries, names of places, dates. If we can cross-reference those with historical records or even local archives, we might piece together more of their story. And perhaps even find where Eleanor's book might have come from." "Willow Creek has a wonderful historical society," Elara offered, her mind already buzzing with possibilities. "Mrs. Gable, the curator, is a walking encyclopedia of local history. She might even remember something about Eleanor Evelyn. if she lived here for a time after her return from England. Perfect, Leo said, his smile widening. It sounds like we have a mission. A dual mission, in fact. One for the archives and one for your grandmother's library. He reached across the table, his hand finding hers, his fingers gently interlacing with hers. I have a feeling this is going to be quite an adventure, Alara, and I can't think of anyone I'd rather share it with. Her heart fluttered at his touch, at the sincerity in his voice. Me neither, Leo. She squeezed his hand gently, a silent promise passing between them. The morning light filtering through the bookshop window seemed to illuminate not just the dust motes, but the very air around them, charged with the magic of a story just beginning to unfold, a story they would write together, one whisper at a time. The world, once a collection of individual stories for Alara, was now a grand tapestry, and she, with Leo by her side, was finally ready to weave her own vibrant thread into its beautiful design. His hand gently squeezed hers, a silent promise passing between them. The morning light filtering through the bookshop window seemed to illuminate not just the dust motes, but the very air around them, charged with the magic of a story just beginning to unfold, a story they would write together, one whisper at a time. The world, once a collection of individual stories for Alara, was now a grand tapestry, and she, with Leo by her side, was finally ready to weave her own vibrant thread into its beautiful design. Alara's breath caught, a soft tremor passing through her. She looked up, her gaze meeting Leo's, and in his eyes she saw not just warmth, but a deep understanding, as if he'd read the very chapters of her soul she hadn't dared to share. A shy smile touched her lips, and Leo's own broadened, crinkling the corners of his eyes in a way that made her heart flutter. He didn't pull away, nor did she. For a moment, they simply stood, the quiet hum of the bookshop around them, holding hands amidst shelves filled with countless other tales of love and adventure. Alara. Leo's voice was a gentle murmur, rich and low, a sound that seemed to perfectly fit the cozy atmosphere. I was wondering, now that the morning rush is over, and it looks like it'll be a quiet hour or two, would you perhaps consider letting me treat you to coffee? There's a wonderful little cafe just 2 streets over. They have the best chai latte in town, and I suspect you might appreciate their cozy reading nooks. Alara's cheeks warmed, a delightful blush spreading. The thought of extending this moment, of sitting across from Leo, talking not about books for customers, but about anything and everything that came to mind, filled her with a thrilling mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Her usual instinct would have been to politely decline, to retreat into the comforting familiarity of her solitude and her books. But something about Leo, about the quiet strength in his hand, the genuine kindness in his eyes, urged her forward. I would like that very much, Leo, she managed, her voice a little softer than usual. She felt a lightness she hadn't known was possible, a spring in her step as she finally released his hand to tidy a stray stack of novels, her movements imbued with a new grace. Just let me put a "be back soon" sign on the door. Mrs. Gable will be here for her regular Tuesday mystery by 11. Leo watched her, a quiet contentment settling over him. He leaned against the counter, hands tucked into his pockets, observing the way her fingers lovingly smoothed the spines of the books, the way a strand of her dark hair fell across her face as she bent to rearrange a lower shelf. He found himself captivated by these small, ordinary gestures, seeing in them a quiet poetry. He had always been drawn to the stories within books, but now, he felt an undeniable pull towards the unfolding story of the woman before him. A few minutes later, the bookshop door clicked shut behind them, the familiar scent of aged paper momentarily replaced by the crisp morning air and the distant aroma of brewing coffee. The cafe, named the Inkwell, was indeed cozy, with mismatched armchairs, soft lighting, and shelves overflowing with books, many bearing the telltale stamps of having been borrowed from Leah's shop. Alara smiled, a sense of belonging washing over her as they settled into a plush velvet booth in a quiet corner. It's lovely here, Alara said, taking in the scene. She watched a young woman sketching in a notebook, an older gentleman engrossed in a newspaper, and a mother reading aloud to her child. It was a tableau of quiet lives, each weaving their own small narrative into the fabric of the day. I thought you'd like it, Leo replied, handing her a menu. It's a favorite haunt of mine, perfect for getting lost in a good book, or even better, for discovering a new conversation. He ordered a black coffee, and Elara, emboldened by the warmth that was steadily spreading through her, decided on the chai latte Head recommended. As they waited, the initial shyness began to dissipate, replaced by a comfortable ease. They talked about books, of course, their favorite genres, the authors who had shaped them, the power of a well-told story. Elara discovered that Leo had a surprising fondness for epic fantasy, while Leo was delighted to learn of Elara's passion for forgotten classics and obscure poets. There's something magical about bringing a book back into the light after it's been overlooked for decades, Elara mused, her eyes alight. It's like giving a voice to a story that thought it had been silenced forever. I completely agree, Leo said, leaning forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. Every book has a soul, doesn't it? And sometimes, it just needs the right person to find it, to understand its language. He paused, then added, It reminds me a little of people, actually. We all have our own stories, waiting to be truly seen and heard. Elara felt a jolt, a recognition in his words that resonated deeply within her. It was as if he'd articulated a thought she'd only ever held in the quiet chambers of her own mind. She found herself sharing more freely than she ever had before, speaking of her quiet life, her dreams of perhaps one day writing her own stories, though she quickly downplayed it, calling it a silly fantasy. It's not silly at all, Elara, Leo countered gently, his tone firm but kind. The most beautiful stories often begin as quiet whispers in the heart. And from what I've seen, you have an incredible gift for observation, for understanding the nuances of character and emotion. I have no doubt you'd write something truly remarkable. His belief in her was a balm, a warm embrace that settled around her heart. It was a feeling she hadn't realized she was missing until now. Their coffees arrived, and the rich, spiced aroma of Elara's chai latte was as comforting as Leo's words. They continued to talk, the conversation flowing effortlessly from books to local happenings, to their childhoods, to the simple joys they found in everyday life. Leo spoke of growing up in a small town not unlike theirs, of his love for tinkering with old clocks and finding beauty in forgotten things, which explained his meticulous care for the bookshop's antique fixtures. Elara in turn found herself opening up about her fascination with history, her quiet afternoons spent sketching in her journal, and the profound solace she found in the solitude of her apartment above the shop. As the sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows through the cafe windows, Elara realized that hours had slipped by unnoticed. The ease with which they conversed, the way Leo listened intently, his head tilted slightly, a thoughtful expression on his face, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced before. She felt a connection that transcended mere acquaintance, a nascent understanding that felt both profound and exhilarating. Reluctantly, they decided it was time to head back to the bookshop. Mrs. Gable, a woman whose love for a good mystery rivaled her love for a fresh-baked scone, would surely be waiting. As they walked back, the bustling sounds of the town seemed to fade into a comfortable background hum. Thank you, Leo, Elara said, her voice soft as they reached the bookshop door. That was truly lovely. Leo smiled, his gaze tender. The pleasure was all mine, Elara. Perhaps we could do it again sometime? Maybe a walk through the park or even just another coffee whenever you have a moment. Her heart gave another hopeful flutter. I'd like that very much, she confirmed, her smile genuine and bright. The following days settled into a comfortable rhythm, yet everything felt subtly different. Elara found herself anticipating Leo's visits, her heart quickening whenever the bell above the bookshop door chimed, even if it was just a regular customer. He started coming by more often, not just for books, but to simply chat, to share a quiet moment. He'd bring her a small, thoughtful treat, a perfectly ripe plum from the market, a delicate pastry from the bakery, or a single fragrant rose he'd found blooming in his garden. Each gesture, small as it was, spoke volumes of his gentle consideration. One afternoon Leo arrived with a worn, leather-bound copy of a book Elara had mentioned in passing, a relatively obscure collection of essays by an Irish writer she admired. I remembered you talking about it, he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Found it in an antique shop further down the coast. Thought you might appreciate it. Elara took the book, her fingers tracing the faded gold lettering on the spine. It was a rare edition, one she'd only ever seen in bibliographies. Leo, this is incredible, she whispered, genuinely touched. How did you even find it? He shrugged, a playful glint in his eyes. A good story always finds its way to the right reader, doesn't it? and I had a feeling this one belonged with you." That evening, Alara sat curled in her favorite armchair, the book open on her lap, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Leo. His thoughtfulness, his quiet strength, the way he truly listened to her. She realized she was falling, slowly, gently, like the turning pages of a beloved story, deeper and deeper into the quiet magic of their connection. A week later, Leo suggested an evening walk. "There's a clear sky predicted," he said, his voice a soft invitation over the phone, a new ritual they'd fallen into. "And I know a spot by the old bridge where the stars are absolutely breathtaking, away from the town lights, if you're not too busy, of course." Elara's schedule was usually filled with the comfortable solitude of books and the quiet hum of her own thoughts. But the thought of sharing the vastness of the night sky with Leo filled her with a profound sense of rightness. "I'd love to, Leo," she replied, her voice imbued with a warmth that surprised even herself. They met after the bookshop closed, the scent of evening primroses and damp earth filling the air. Leo was waiting for her, leaning against the lamppost, a soft smile gracing his lips as she approached. He offered her his arm, a gesture both old-fashioned and utterly charming, and Alara found herself taking it, her hand resting lightly on his forearm. Their walk was punctuated by companionable silences and gentle conversation. They talked about their days, shared anecdotes, and spoke of their hopes and dreams. Alara, emboldened by the twilight and Leo's steady presence, found herself speaking of her quiet childhood, her parents' love for books, and how the bookshop had become her sanctuary after they passed. She spoke of her fear of putting herself out there, of the comfort she found in the predictable narratives of fiction. Leo listened, his gaze fixed on the path ahead, but she felt his attention, a silent anchor. When she finished, he didn't offer platitudes. Instead, he simply squeezed her arm gently. "It takes immense courage, Alara, to live a life built on your own terms, to find solace in the things that truly nourish your soul. And it takes even more courage to open that world up to someone new." He paused, then turned to her, his eyes soft in the dim light. "I feel incredibly honored that you're letting me in." His words were a revelation, a balm to the quiet anxieties she'd carried for so long. She realized that Leo didn't see her solitude as a weakness, but as a testament to her strength, her unique way of navigating the world. He understood. They reached the old stone bridge, its arch silhouetted against the deepening twilight. Below, the river flowed with a gentle murmur, reflecting the first glimmer of stars. Leo led her to a smooth, flat stone overlooking the water. "Here," he said, gesturing for her to sit. He settled beside her, close enough that their arms brushed, a comforting warmth passing between them. As the last vestiges of sunset faded, the sky transformed into a breathtaking canvas of deep indigo and velvet black, studded with countless sparkling diamonds. The Milky Way, a faint, ethereal band of light, stretched across the heavens. "It's truly magnificent," Alara breathed, her voice filled with wonder. She felt small, yet profoundly connected to something vast and eternal. "Isn't it?" Leo murmured, his voice a low hum beside her. "Sometimes when the world feels too loud, too complicated, coming out here helps put everything into perspective. It reminds you that there's so much more, so many untold stories written in the stars." He turned his head, his gaze finding hers in the starlight. "And it reminds me how precious these quiet moments are, especially when shared with someone special." His words hung in the air, a delicate thread weaving between them. Alara's heart swelled with a feeling she couldn't quite name, a mixture of joy, gratitude, and a thrilling sense of possibility. She looked at him, his profile illuminated by the faint starlight, and saw a quiet strength, a profound kindness, and a depth that mirrored the night sky above them. "Leo," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "I feel like I've known you for so much longer than I have." He chuckled softly, a warm sound that resonated through her. "I feel the same, Alara. It's as if we've been reading the same book for years, just on different pages, and now we've finally found each other in the margins." They sat there for a long time, watching the stars, the silence between them no longer a void, but a comfortable, living space filled with unspoken understanding and nascent affection. Alara felt a profound sense of peace settle over her, a quiet joy that hummed beneath her skin. She reached out, her fingers hesitantly brushing against his. He immediately interlaced their fingers, his grip gentle but firm, a silent affirmation of their shared moment. The cool night air wrapped around them, but Alara felt warm, a comforting heat emanating from Leo's presence. She leaned her head slightly onto his shoulder, a spontaneous gesture that felt utterly natural. He shifted, his arm coming around her, pulling her gently closer. Nestled against him under the vast star-strewn sky, Alara felt a sense of belonging she hadn't known was possible. This was more than just a friendship blooming. It was a connection deepening, a story unfolding with every shared glance, every soft word, every comforting touch. The world indeed was a grand tapestry, and she, with Leo by her side, was finally ready to weave her own vibrant thread, rich with the colors of discovery, companionship, and a love that promised to be as timeless as the stories they both cherished. The stars twinkled above them, silent witnesses to a beautiful, heartwarming tale that was still very much in its magical beginning. The stars twinkled above them, silent witnesses to a beautiful, heartwarming tale that was still very much in its magical beginning. The night deepened, but the magic didn't fade with the dawn. It simply transformed, settling into the quiet rhythm of their days. Alara, with her imagination forever brimming with stories, found herself drawing inspiration from every shared moment with Leo. He, in turn, found a new vibrancy in the antique pages he meticulously restored, each faded illustration seeming to hum with the quiet joy Alara brought into his world. Their dates were a testament to their shared sensibilities. They spent hours browsing dusty antique shops, not for specific treasures, but for the sheer delight of discovering forgotten histories together. They'd linger in quiet cafes, sipping spiced tea and sharing anecdotes from their days, Alara recounting the whimsical sketches of talking animals or brave knights she was bringing to life for a new children's book, Leo detailing the intricate binding of an 18th-century atlas or the delicate process of conserving a fragile manuscript. They'd walk through sun-dappled parks, their hands brushing, their conversations drifting from the profound to the playfully absurd, always returning to the comfort of each other's presence. Alara was a children's book illustrator, her studio a riot of color and half-finished sketches, smelling faintly of charcoal and freshly brewed tea. Leo, a conservator of rare books, worked in a quiet, sunlit workshop filled with the scent of old paper, leather, and beeswax. Their worlds, though distinct, were bound by a reverence for stories, for beauty, for the tangible magic held within pages. Alara, with her vivid imagination, often found herself sketching Leo's thoughtful profile as he described the journey of a book through time, his hands, usually so precise and careful, gesturing with an unexpected passion. He, conversely, would send her photographs of particularly beautiful illuminations or historical maps, knowing she would appreciate the artistry. Their connection deepened with every shared laugh, every comforting silence, every glance that spoke volumes. Alara, who had always felt a quiet joy in her solitary pursuits, discovered an even richer happiness in sharing them with Leo. He was not just a companion, he was a mirror reflecting her own dreams, an anchor grounding her flights of fancy. She found herself confiding in him about her deepest aspirations, her occasional artistic doubts, and even her silly childhood memories. Leo listened with an unwavering attentiveness, his eyes warm, his responses always gentle and insightful. For Leo, Alara was the vibrant splash of color in a life he'd always found fulfilling, but perhaps a little too muted. She brought a lightness, a spontaneous joy that he hadn't known he was missing. He found himself humming as he worked, smiling at inside jokes only she would understand, and looking forward to the end of each day with an eager anticipation he hadn't experienced before. One crisp autumn evening, as they sat by a crackling fire in Alara's cozy living room, a letter arrived for Leo. It was an offer, one he'd subtly hoped for but never truly expected. A prestigious 3-month project at the National Library, restoring a collection of priceless medieval manuscripts. The catch? It was in Edinburgh, hundreds of miles away. Alara felt a pang in her chest, a familiar tightening she recognized as the fear of change, of disruption. Edinburgh, she whispered, the name tasting both exciting and distant. Leo looked at her, his expression a mix of excitement and trepidation. It's a dream project, Alara, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He paused, his gaze searching hers. But it's also 3 months. 3 months away from you. A quiet settled between them, the only sound the crackle of the fire. Alara knew what she had to say. You have to go, Leo, she said, her voice soft but firm. "This is incredible. And 3 months. We can make 3 months work." His relief was palpable. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Are you sure? I don't want to jeopardize what we have." "What we have," Elira said, squeezing his hand, "is strong enough to withstand a bit of distance. It'll just make our reunion all the sweeter." Ah. Though she said it with conviction, a tiny flutter of anxiety remained in her stomach. Their story was still so new, so tender. Could it truly blossom across such a distance? The next few weeks were a flurry of preparations. Elira helped Leo pack, her heart aching a little with each book and tool he carefully placed in his trunk. They made plans for daily calls, weekly video chats, and promised to send each other postcards from their respective cities. The night before he left, they shared a quiet dinner at home, cooking together, laughing and holding each other close, savoring every precious second. When Leo finally departed, Elira felt a profound sense of emptiness. Her studio felt quieter, her walks through the park less vibrant. She missed his thoughtful observations, the way his hand found hers without thought, the comforting presence of his quiet strength. But she refused to let the distance dim her spirit. She threw herself into her work, channeling her emotions into her illustrations, giving her characters an even deeper sense of longing and hope. True to their word, their calls became a cherished ritual. Leo would describe the ancient scripts he was meticulously restoring, his voice filled with a scholarly passion that Elira adored. Elira would tell him about the progress of her book, sometimes even holding up a new illustration to the camera, asking for his opinion. They wrote letters too, an old-fashioned gesture that felt wonderfully intimate. Leo's elegant script on thick paper, filled with musings and affectionate words, became a treasured possession for Elira. She'd read them tucked in bed, the scent of his cologne still faintly clinging to the paper, and feel a surge of warmth. As the weeks turned into months, something profound happened. The distance, instead of weakening their bond, seemed to strengthen it. It forced them to communicate more deeply, to articulate their feelings, to truly listen. Elira realized that her love for Leo wasn't just about his physical presence. It was about the connection of their minds, the resonance of their spirits. She missed him terribly, but the missing was intertwined with an unwavering certainty that he was worth every moment of longing. Midway through Leo's stay, Elira decided to surprise him. She booked a train ticket to Edinburgh, arranging a few days off from her illustration work. The journey was long, but her heart was light with anticipation. When she arrived at the National Library, Leo was just stepping out, looking tired but content, a smudge of ink on his cheek. He looked up, and his eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with an incandescent joy. "Elira," he whispered, as if she were a mirage. She simply smiled, her eyes brimming with happy tears. "Surprise." He crossed the distance between them in a few swift strides, pulling her into a fierce, tender embrace. His arms wrapped around her, holding her so tightly she could feel the steady beat of his heart against hers. "You're here," he murmured into her hair, his voice thick with emotion. "You're actually here." Those few days in Edinburgh were magical. Leo showed her the ancient library, its hushed halls filled with centuries of stories. They explored the winding cobbled streets of the old city, climbed Arthur's Seat for breathtaking views, and shared delicious meals in cozy pubs. Being together again in a new city felt like a miniature adventure, a reaffirmation of their shared journey. The ease, the comfort, the profound joy of their companionship had only deepened. When it was time for Elira to leave, the goodbye was still hard, but it was tinged with a new confidence. They knew now, without a shadow of a doubt, that their love was resilient, capable of spanning any distance. Finally, the day of Leo's return arrived. Elira met him at the train station, her heart pounding with excitement. The moment she saw him step onto the platform, a wave of warmth washed over her. He looked thinner, perhaps a little weary, but his eyes shone with the same gentle affection she cherished. Their reunion was quieter than the one in Edinburgh, a soft embrace, a lingering kiss, a shared sigh of contentment. It was the quiet joy of coming home. That evening, as they sat curled on Elira's sofa, the fire once again casting dancing shadows on the walls, Leo reached into his bag. He pulled out a small leather-bound book, its cover exquisitely crafted, its pages blank. "I had this made," he explained, his voice soft. "A book for our story, Elira, for all the chapters we've yet to write." He then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Alara's breath hitched. Her heart began to race, a joyful drumbeat in her chest. Leo opened the box to reveal a delicate silver ring, intricately designed with tiny, intertwining threads. "Alara," he began, his gaze unwavering, full of love and earnest hope. "You came into my life like a forgotten poem, beautiful and profound. You filled my world with color and meaning I never knew it lacked. We spoke of weaving our own vibrant thread into the grand tapestry of the world. Will you, my love, weave your life with mine? Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Alara's eyes, hot and sweet. There was no hesitation, no doubt. This was the moment she had unknowingly waited for, the culmination of a connection that felt as ancient and comforting as the stories they both held dear. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh yes, Leo. 1,000 times, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, its cool silver a perfect fit, the intertwining threads a poignant symbol of their journey. Then he pulled her into a tender kiss, a promise whispered between their lips of a future filled with shared dreams, quiet joys, and a love that would continue to unfold, chapter by beautiful chapter. They spent the rest of the evening dreaming aloud, filling the blank pages of their future with visions of a life intertwined. A small cottage filled with books and art, children's laughter echoing through the halls, quiet evenings by the fire, always together. The world indeed was a grand tapestry, and they, with their love as their guiding thread, were ready to weave a story that would be as timeless as the stars, as rich as the most cherished tales, and as heartwarming as the love that now glowed brightly within their hearts, forever and always.